death. It's the one certainty we'll share, yet it remains the greatest taboo. We package it away, tie it up in rituals, and shield society from speaking openly. In this episode, we're trying something different. We're stepping into the unknown, and we're opening the floor for the first time. This is the conversation that nobody wants to have, yet everyone needs to hear. I give you the uncomfortable conversation.
What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about grief? How was that impacted in your own grieving process?
I think that people think that after a certain amount of time that's it, you should be over it. But it never goes away. An example is one particular day I wasn't having a good day and somebody, what's the matter with you miserable so-and-so, and it's like, my son's not here. So that is my biggest issue.
Time.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the thing I've learnt is that it is different for everyone and every situation. And I think that's something that we all need to remember. Somebody might appear to be doing well and actually they're not. And others are very visibly not doing well. It's all that personal grief journey as we talk about. But I just think time is massive, isn't it? Yeah.
And everyone's relationship is different with that person who's passed as well. So you can't really say, I know how you feel, because you don't.
But you alluded to this in the previous podcast, and I talked to you earlier about it, that actually, sometimes it's okay to say to that person that is grieving, I don't know what to say, because that's better than not saying anything. Yeah,
it's like people have gone the other side of the road to divert me, and that really upsets you then, because you think, well, they don't care, but it's just that they don't.
They don't know what to say, or your story might have triggered something really painful for them, and they're revisiting all that is a thought that I have about that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Christine?
I think people, if they've been through grief themselves can assume that they will have the same experience of grief, so they assume that they understand what you're going through. I think anything to do with assumptions around grief, just set them aside from the start. Be curious when you meet somebody, ask questions or just listen, rather than thinking, I know what you're going through. And that idea that you can compare your grief to someone else's. And also I think what you said, Katie, is really interesting, that people within a family, somebody might die, and even with like 3 siblings, all of those siblings will have a different experience of grief. And some of those siblings might not have loved that person in the same way or have really difficult, complex relationship, but that doesn't mean they're not grieving in their own way. So often we talk about grief in terms of love, but often it's much more complex than that. And it's about grieving for the past that went wrong and grieving for the time that you hoped you'd have in a lifetime.
Yeah. And I think, interestingly, I've talked to John a lot about a friend that I lost, and she committed suicide. It was my best friend, and we served in the Royal Navy together. And for a long period of time, I'm okay. It's like you were saying about time. Coming up to Remembrance is an awful time for me. And little things like my son passed out of the Royal Marines a couple of years ago, and he couldn't have his godmother there. And it's that future growing up of things moving on. You have a sense of guilt as well, and you also feel like often you think, I wish I could tell her that. I wish she was here. I wish that experience. And it's that goes through waves of anger. It's not a son. I can't imagine that pain, but it's just that anger you also get in grief. Who do you tell that to? Who do you say that?
And Will was always the person that I spoke to.
Yeah. And you're obviously very close with the nicknames and that, and that lovely relationship. That's
he's my best friend.
Yeah. And that's so hard, because that's the person you want to talk to make it better.
Yeah.
And something will happen and you think, tell Will.
Yeah.
But I can't tell him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that sends you reeling again. Yeah, and then the anger and...
But you've also, I'm slightly deviating from the script here, sorry, but something I was really interested in was your work with Road Space and how you've used this as a positive, and it's easy for us to look externally out and say, wow, that's what you're doing, and being an advocate for that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that
Yeah, Road Peace is a charity that support families of people that have lost people on the road, basically. And unless you're in this position, you would never know about them.
No.
But the things that they do is amazing. I'm actually now a befriender.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I've got a lady that's fresher, I suppose is the word to it all, that I'm helping, which makes me feel as if it's like I would never ever want this to happen to anybody.
No.
But if I can, obviously it's happened to me, and if I can help somebody else, that makes me feel better, and Will always helped everybody. Yeah. So it's like I'm doing it for Will.
So
I mean, I would do it anyway,
Mm.
but for Will, they want to change the laws.
Yeah.
Will was killed by a hit-and-run driver who got a £95 fine for harming Will and a 4-month driving ban for his inconsideration to other road users who may have run over the same debris.
So it's a really hard thing for
We
us
have to
all
sit
to
there and
listen
listen
to
to
that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's not just your grief and the loss of your best friend, your son, and all these emotions. It's also then that injustice that must
definitely
feed into that whole grief.
And then the anger with it as well.
And how rare it is to have somebody put a value on your grief in terms of, you know, whether it's a fine or a length of time, that's supposed to make it okay. I think that's a really specific a grief and a specific experience that you have that lots of people who have somebody die through illness or in other ways don't
it's
ever
traumatic
have.
grief.
Yeah.
And I've learned that there is a great big difference between traumatic grief. Like we were kind of thrown straight into the legal system.
Yeah.
So when you were wanting to be when you need to grieve, you can't. Because you've got all this and you've got all these people, you've got the press, you've got the police, you've got everybody coming at you when
So it's
you're
a process as well as a loss.
Yeah.
You've got to go through this.
That's it. Well, with Road Peace, they've all been through it as well.
Yeah.
But me and myself and my daughter Lydia, we're behind Road Peace. They want to change the law. Remain Report, it's called, because the laws are so outdated. Like if you went and hit somebody's wing mirror, it's exactly the same charge if you kill somebody.
That's mad.
So from all this, I'm part of the Road Peace group.
Incredible.
And
You're being very proactive.
yeah.
Can I ask about something you said about being a befriender and that you're working with somebody, and you described the word her grief as fresher or more fresh to yours. And so it's happened more recently for her.
more recently, yeah.
So, like the experience of working with her, with somebody whose grief is really raw because it's so new, does that enable you to see how you've changed around your grief since your son died?
Yeah, definitely. Like this lady's situation is slightly different, that it wasn't hit and run, but like the process that she's going through with police and all that, I feel I can answer some of her questions, because obviously we've been there before.
Experienced it.
You've just said, and I was going to ask you, Katie, obviously, you know, a lot of the work that you both and John do is around the loss of your mum.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting how we know how boys and girls react differently, and girls are very good at sharing with their friends and talking, and just wondered if you could give us a little bit of an insight into
I wasn't
that.
like that at all. I went totally into myself. I had a really good group of friends around me who, if I wanted to talk, they would have been there.
But you just
didn't. I didn't want. They were a distraction for me. I could distract myself.
So it was the space where you didn't think about mum.
Yeah, definitely.
And you wanted the fun with your friends.
Yeah, go off and find boys.
So again, a misconception that actually you would go to your friends and have that support. So who, looking back, what was the best bit of advice you had at that time then, or what was your support?
I had John, really. Me and John became even closer, and we supported each other. But it always comes back to time, I think. You need that amount of space to just clear your head from it all and process it all. And I remember, like, first when Mum died straight away, I would go to bed asking God, please just let me go and be with my mum now.
Yeah.
Just let me die in my sleep.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to talk to anyone about that.
No.
I kept it all in, and time, that's all I can say is it helped me.
And what year were you in at school?
I was year 9, 10.
Right, okay. So we're hoping that we're making things different by enabling children to have access to support and on apps, and we're changing the way that we're getting children and understanding ACE is a adverse childhood experience, which is the loss of a mum, and we're trying to enable children and young people to have a voice, which is a hard thing to do if at the time you're also saying, I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to.
But I think if it was more talked about, you'd be more willing to talk.
Yeah, it's not a shame.
No.
And as we've all understood, it's a time thing. It's you might be sat in a lesson, boom, that hits you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's giving young people the tools to go, I'm not okay in this moment. I need to do something. Or a person that's this has hit me today. This is hard. Yeah. So then how do we change society? Big question. Shirley, how do we shift and focus?
Over to you,
how do
Shirley.
we do it? How do we shift this misconception or this support?
Well, people being brave enough to talk about their stories.
Yeah.
Women generally, historically, talk more than men, do the sharing, caring thing, but the men are actively being encouraged to get so much better about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not afraid of being loud and proud about my stories. I've had losses with breast cancer 4 times, but prior to that, I lost a baby when I was 7 months pregnant, and then when I was 7 months pregnant again, my mum was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I nipped up to Yorkshire to be there. Lovely evening with my dad. He nipped to town the next day to give me the vehicle to go and see mum in a cottage hospital. Never came back.
Oh.
Minor road crash. I had to go and tell my mum that my dad was dead.
Oh, dear.
Meantime, pregnant. People worrying about me. My mum refused to go anywhere till my baby was born after the previous loss, and so she was terminally ill, but did not die till a month after my daughter was born.
So it's almost like you've experienced different types of grief.
Oh gosh, yes. And my uncle was actually the porter at the hospital who received my dead on arrival father. So lots of really crazy shit over about 18-month period.
Yeah. And how did you manage that?
I had to just get on with it.
Yeah,
and I started working, and that was sort of normal. So yes, I blocked a lot of things out for a long time. My friendship circle was totally different during my breast cancer journey, so I was actually on my own a lot and just having to get on with it and just be busy and pretend that it's all right, I'm fine, it's all right, I'll be fine.
This is quite a personal question, but you said you had to get on with it, and you did. Did you find that it hit you in later life when you had that comforting support?
One of the biggest triggers was having a boy. My family's all pairs of girls in all directions. Right. My second baby, well, my third, but my second living baby was a boy, and that broke my heart because I knew what it would have meant for my dad. I was a surrogate son that my dad never had.
Right.
I was always up a tree and playing football and just being a lad. Still am. Wanted to drive, wanted to motorbike, I was the lad my dad never had. So just having a boy was quite unusual amongst my family, and it just broke my heart. So I did crack up. Combination of postnatal depression, having a boy, and suppressing a lot of grief for a long time. So I was a nut as a fruitcake for
And I'm
about 18
really
months.
interested what you said about facing an illness like that, almost facing your own death.
That's right. Well, Mum died at 52 of cancer, breast cancer, and I was 42 when I was diagnosed. Didn't think I was going to see 43. Then it was weird getting to 50. Then weird getting older than my mother. And again, with grief, who do you ask the questions of? I haven't got anybody to ask. Did I have that disease or that disease? When did I? There's nobody to ask. So that's harsh.
Yeah. And it's that good news. What you'd normally do is pick up the phone to your mum. There must be times in your life, Katie, where you've gone, oh, wish mum, not just for birthing the children, but little things, daily things.
Yeah, a wedding, getting married, and but this year I turned 40 this year, and that I'm now older than my mum was.
That's right.
Which I never thought I would get to. As you grow up, you don't think you're going to outlive
that
your
milestone
mom.
age. Yeah.
So I've always thought, am I going to get to 40?
Yeah.
I did, and it's all good.
Well done. Happy birthday. Very recently, so happy birthday. And Christy, how do we get better?
As a society?
As a society. You're like our industry professional here. What?
One of them. I'm no expert on this, but I think it's a dual-pronged attack. So it's telling our stories, your stories, although we often do that with our safe bubble of people we know who can cope with them, don't we?
Yeah.
Although you've certainly reached out further than that with the campaigning work that you're doing. But I think going to schools, educating the generations that come through, and I think I have hope for the future already, because not just about grief, but we're raising generations who are more emotionally articulate than ours, I think. And it's partly to do with, hopefully experience passed down, but they have the language. And they talk about grief and how to support each other in a different way. There's more of an understanding around mental health and things like that as well. So as soon as that openness happens, then people have the courage to be with each other and sit with each other through difficult things and sit with uncomfortable feelings. But certainly John Adams' campaign in schools, and the reception of that, and the work of other charities who are already doing that, the openness that people have is really exciting. And there was had a lovely opportunity with a local school. So we're Bridgnorth, a little market town, and there was a local school which experienced a bereavement within their team, and their approach was wonderful. And in one of their RE lessons, they were talking about funerals, and they were talking about Christian funerals, and one of the children asked, what would you do if it was a non-Christian funeral? And my son, who knows what I do, and I talk openly about what I do because I work in funerals and as a funeral celebrant, he said, oh, my mum knows all about that. And so they invited me in, which I thought was an incredibly brave thing to do, to talk about funerals, so to talk about what cremation is. And so I went in and did a little funeral for them. So they all had, it was for a little slug, a plastic slug, not a real one. We had a little mini coffin, and they had a funeral director's hat, and they had a eulogy. I did a proper service. They all took a primary school. So this is years 5 and 6, and we sent messages out to the parents beforehand. Said, we will be doing this. If you don't wish your child to participate in this, they don't have to. And they all took on roles in the funeral, and we had a procession at the start. We had music. We had a photo tribute, and then they asked tons of questions at the end, and they were so open to it. So it's about having professionals able to go into schools, talk about things that our generation don't necessarily have the skills and emotional language to.
Age appropriate,
all of those things.
So I went into school with John to do some work after a school had lost a member of staff, and the head teacher reached out to us, and we had to, as you say, age appropriately change each classroom that we visited. It was quite nice that we did it together. From my safeguarding role and my position within Shropshire Council, we went in together, and I knew the person as well. And it was really interesting. Children felt they had that safe space. As you say, parents had the control if they could or couldn't stay. But it's that guarantee in life, somebody around them or somebody they know will die. Yet it's something that nobody will speak about. So you could see some reacted to, us going in and showing a toy hearse, and this is what's going to happen, and we'll go past the school, and it's that. And then others you could see where it's a okay subject at home, and it'd be like, the questions that they asked, and that was incredibly hard. But later on, I was in a shop, and I still had my suit on and name tag, and this little girl waved me hello, and her mum said, oh, you can't just say hello to people, who's that? And she said, that's the lady that let us know that Miss is an angel and she's okay, mummy. So that was her conception. So I rang your brother, and we were flooded to tears, obviously, but it was important to realise that we'd given that little girl the tools that day to understand. It's okay. This
and
is
then
all
hopefully
right.
go home.
Whatever
and
her
talk
thoughts
about
were, or she took out of that conversation, she found some comfort that it's okay. And it's that enabling them and empowering them to go, I'm safe enough here to put my hand up and ask a question.
If you have the language, if you have a script even, so as a parent who has to break some terrible news to their child, then you tend to be able to find the courage. Because parents, often when I go round to a family's house to learn all about the person who has died, sometimes a parent will say, I don't know how to talk to my child about this. And they can get themselves in such pickles, these poor parents, about the funeral, about what the coffin is. And I've had parents say that, it's just a magic box, it's nothing to do with, your
and the
dad or your
confusion
granddad,
starts.
and the confusion starts. So to give them simple language, and there are some brilliant resources. Child Bereavement UK are extraordinary with their set of resources that they have, and it's like they give you scripts to say, if you need to talk about this sort of situation, these words work. If you need to talk about this, these words work.
And age appropriate materials, because I did the training recently that John had organised, and we did it, and it was really interesting to see the amount of professionals in that room all saying, help us, we know we need to deal with this, what's the best thing to do? And it was really, the only thing I would have changed about the event, I said to John and fed back to Child Bereavement UK, is that networking time afterwards. Like you go through the course, you go through the training, but that moment afterwards where we were all exchanging stories and tips and literature ideas and the tools that they'd been given, we kind of needed a bit more time to go through that and process it, because it's all, as you say, it can be triggering. You know.
I think a lot of littler children, smaller children, they find it quite black and white.
Yes.
As long as you tell them, explain the situation, they
get it.
They're resilient. I can remember telling my son when he was little that his grandma had died, and he was like, well, I don't know why you're all sad, because you'll see her again in heaven. And he's just,
that's how he processed
why sad about it?
It's the time
she's still here with us.
It's incredible, isn't it?
I've got the mixed blessing of being the oldest in the room, and in my day, kids just didn't go to funerals at all. And so the first ones, my first ones were really significant, a real slap in the face. So I counted that by when my daughter's had a school friend that lost her dad and made her come with me to the funeral, just so that she started experiencing and talking about it from the age of about 12. I remember, and all that is changing.
Going to a funeral for a young man that was in a tragic accident when I worked in a school, and I remember standing next to these like 6 foot strong rugby playing lads that buckled when they saw a coffin brought in, because they hadn't ever seen that, or had the capacity to go to a funeral, or the need to, or.
So I think that is generally getting a bit better, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. Right, we've covered that one question. We haven't got much time, so
I think a few questions are blended.
Well, we've kind of done 8, haven't we, about children and that. So we'll and we talked about society and how we can do better.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the video so far. I hope you're really enjoying it. Please click the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, a huge thank you to our sponsors. Their details are found in the video description just below. Thank you so much.
This is quite an important one. We've kind of touched on it, but it'd be really interesting to know, especially with a couple of you, what your thoughts are. In your experience, what kind of support did you find the most helpful during your grief? And what kind of support was missing? If you could look back now, what was good, what was bad, what was missing? I know, kind of looking to you. Significant loss, loss that's just unimaginable.
I think Road Peace and John and the rugby club
Oh, okay, that's
are
interesting.
the ones that brought me through, because like Will was a big part of the rugby community. And the support was just absolutely immense. I just can't put into words enough how
they did it.
And like I say, with Road Peace, which was a good support because they've all been through road death and the traumatic grief. And again with John, he was just amazing. Well, and yourself.
Obviously.
But it's just so comfortable being able to, like with the rugby club, it was all about Will, and they all knew Will, and it was the good memories and things. And like with you and John, it was, I remember picking the phone up to John, and I said, Will's been killed. And I said, I know exactly what I want. And John said, I'm really pleased to hear that. And absolutely everything that I wanted
happened.
We made happen, didn't we? And for the worst day of my life, it was actually the most awesome.
Okay.
Because it was Will throughout, wasn't it? It was just Will throughout. And obviously like Lydia, my daughter, and other family, we all reacted differently. obviously in the initial stages it's the shock and the horror and devastation and everything else. And we have supported each other. But yeah, for me it's definitely Road Peace, definitely Bridgnorth Rugby Club, and definitely Perry and Phillips. Definitely.
There you go.
It's just so important now, isn't it, that you get to do that last thing you can for him.
Isn't it? You can't rehearse it, can you? Can't rehearse it, and and I mean it wasn't a nice thing because of the legalities of everything. Literally, we didn't get Will back for 6 weeks.
Okay.
So in that time, obviously, he didn't look like Will. And I can remember going in to see Will and John said, "I'm coming with you." I said, no, I'm fine. You know, I've seen, because I had to go and identify Will. I said, no, I'm fine. He said, "No, I'm coming in with you." I said, "Yeah, if you want to, come with me." And I remember when I walked through the door and I saw Will, I knew why John was there. And
But that now is incredible what you're doing for other families that are going through it. It probably would be easy for you not to do this, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But you've not gone down that route for Will.
No, I've got to keep going for Will.
Yeah.
My biggest plan, my main plan was that when this happened, it was like 2 months I'm going to be behind him.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds awful because obviously I've got a beautiful daughter, a beautiful granddaughter, but at that time your vision is just...
And it sounds honest. It
was like it was Will
and that's, as you say, that's something people don't talk about, the pain that you sit in, and not just the mental pain, the actual whole physical pain you must have been.
It's a pain that you're never going to fix the pain. No. You can't, the amount of medication you get, but you can't put a plaster on it. You know, it's never going to heal. It's learning to live with that alongside of you. And it's always going to be there, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because Will was always...
John and I talk about this, that grief, when it hits you, it is like a big boulder you're carrying, and over time you learn to deal with it, and it will become like a pebble in your pocket. Never goes, it's there. Sometimes it feels heavier, sometimes it's you're not even really aware it's there, but it's not, and it's this constant, management of it.
A lady from the rugby club that I'd never met before came up to me at Will's celebration, we called it, and she said, "I was told," because she'd lost her son as well, and she said, you can get a pebble, a stone, or whatever, she said, or imaginary one, and she said, "You keep that in your pocket." She said, "And as you play with it and touch it over time, the sharp edges become smoother." And that really, really stuck in my mind.
And child bereavement use that as a tool, don't they? When they're talking to people, they sort of use that to focus.
I think it's that that's a really clear example of, you have this internal pain that you can't have a pill to take away, not properly distance it a bit or numb it a bit. You can't take it out of yourself. And so I think that's when people need to find a sense of purpose around it. So for you, your work with Road Peace, but also it's interesting about the funeral and how important you said that was, his celebration, because what in those early stages, it allows you to do something creative with this awful thing inside of you. So you can just put it there for a bit. You can look at it in terms of the songs you've chosen, the ritual you've created for him, and it gives you that bit of breathing space, that distance, and it feels like you're honouring them. It feels like you're doing something. Because when somebody dies, the need to continue caring for them and loving them doesn't. So it makes it gives it form to do that.
And you're expressing your own love as well. You're getting that feeling out of yourself.
That's it. And there was little bits of, it's like Will went on his it was his friend's trailer and his tractor, and that's what we wanted, and we had beautiful tractors behind him. He was on there with a crate of beer.
You see that now, there is more saying, and you must see it in what you do, Katie, day in, day out, that there's so much more control and personal sort of ideas, and families, good examples as well of what families like to do and how they make that special. As you say, you've called it a celebration, so personal.
I actually wrote the whole thing, didn't I?
Wow.
Because we had a celebrant come in, and I'm not religious, Will wasn't religious, and she gave me kind of a thing as to what she thought, and I said, "No, I don't want any of that." So I actually wrote it, and I did it in stages of Will's life. So it was like Will the boy, Will growing up to be a man, and then Will the man.
Yeah.
And it was in those stages, and
what a lovely thing to do for your son.
Yeah.
And songs. And this goes back to something we said earlier about being open and talking about death. Will and Lydia, we've always spoken openly about it. They knew exactly when my time come, exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
And Will has always said to me that, he said, when I die, he said, I want this song, and it's called Give Heaven Some Hell by Hardy. And you listen to it, and it's about him and his best mate, and you know, going and driving their cars around the field and having a beer and this, that and the other. And it was just in that week before Will went, he said, I've got another song that I want at my funeral. And I said, what's that then? And it was called Drink a Beer, and again it was to do with him and his mate, and that was just that week. So those two songs.
But you know, talking there, I feel like I've got a sense of the real Will.
Yeah.
I just feeling that as a, oh God, I'm going to cry. As a mum, that just resonated
So we
something
knew.
with me. That's
And that's why I knew what was right for Will.
I think you'd be very proud of him.
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah.
So and like it wasn't just me, it was obviously like Will's best mates and his dad and his sister, and we all put in what we knew Will would want. And we said it, we like even the clothes, it's like you wear whatever you knew, in what capacity you knew Will. If you're a rugby player that knew Will, come in your rugby kit.
Lovely.
You know, if you're a farmer, come in your wellies. I wore bright blue because it was Will's favourite colour.
yeah.
But it was definitely...
But you took ownership of that funeral, and I think that's helped you so much moving forward.
Definitely, because I knew we'd got it right for Will.
Yeah.
And
that's what you do, though, isn't it? You enable families to have that special.
But some people don't know that, though, do they?
No.
They just think, oh well, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. But again, like say we all support and John's support. It's like
so that's the misconception, but this is what we think.
Yeah.
Because looking back, it's actually really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I think there's also a worry with the unattended direct cremations, where people aren't taking ownership and they're not owning the fact that this has happened. They're just, you just deal with it.
My friend that I feel is the biggest loss. I'm quite lucky I've still got both parents, and my biggest loss for me was my best friend. Her mum blamed friends because she said we were good friends. Or if we were good friends, she wouldn't have done it. And I know. And I think we never got our goodbye, we never got our... Because we knew it would have been Metallica, we knew all the things that she would have wanted, and we never even knew where she ended up, a place. So we've created a place where we remember her, but it's still that not having that chance. So it's so important what you did that day, not just for yourself, but your daughter and all the rugby club
and the communities.
It's so important. So to be brave enough to do it, it is really important.
It was a Will day, but it was. We all knew that was Will, and we all knew that that's how it should have been.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of having a little bit of a dark sense of humour now and then. And in April actually, a 30-year-old friend died on one of my other best friend's birthdays. Like I'm going to remember that one. But she was amazing, and she knew she wanted to be cremated. And I've got some of Wendy in a Talisker bottle because we were going up to the Orkneys. It was blowing a hooligan. We ended up throwing a left end upon the Isle of Skye. Well, you've got to go to the Talisker distillery, don't you? And we'd never had it before. We've liked it ever since. So I've got Wendy in a Talisker bottle, and I decant her into a little thing and take her with me because we've been all over the bloody place. And so she comes with me on my little excursions here and there, and it's great. But one of the things that triggered the thought, her husband died about 10 years ago, and the boys have still got some of his ashes, and one of the boys said, so shall we put you and Dad together? And she said, I don't want to be with him. and I just quite like the dark sense of humour. Did not want to be mixed with her husband, thank you, no.
But we come from a society where you had this sort of funeral to now we are making ways, and you can have this sort of celebration,
Yeah.
life celebration. You know, I wear black all the time, as Katie knows, whereas a friend was she loved gold and pink, so there was some, please be reflective, and you know, we walked out to the Killers, Mr. Brightside, and it's just so her, and there's the important things that are so personal now, so we are getting there, and you must see that in your role, what you do.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we use this phrase celebration of life, and I find it a bit troubling sometimes, because I know exactly what you mean when you say I want it to be a celebration of their life, and families will often say that the first thing that they will say to me, because what they mean is they don't want it to be this dark, sombre, Victorian affair, because that's not their person. But actually, they're sitting in front of me, I can see how raw their grief is. They've chosen How Will I Live Without You, you know, these heartbreaking songs, and so it's really important to give people permission to say, this doesn't have to, I can see that the word celebrate doesn't sit very comfortably with you here. I don't feel like we've got the language right.
No.
Recently there was a family I worked with chose an honouring of their person, and that was full of laughter. But to have the conversation with people and say, you can have this reflect who they are and the joy they brought, and how lucky you feel to have spent your life with them, alongside this raw, painful grief that not just you feel, but the community of people there feel. They can go side by side. You don't have to have one or the other. We don't have to pretend. So sometimes I feel as if the phrase celebration of life forces families to think, we've got to be okay. Because often the person before they die will say, I want you to celebrate my life. I don't want anyone crying. But actually that is such a burden for the people left behind, isn't it?
And we do know that actually you've got to go through that. You've got to feel the pain and upset, because actually that's a helpful part of grief, isn't it? To feel like you saying that you didn't do that. You didn't.
I just went in. But I tell people now, I'm like, you've got to have a day where you cry. That's fine. You need to. Yeah, you need to. But you haven't got to. It's just there's no rules, is there? There's no rules.
Personal.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to ask you all now a very personal question, and think, why, out of all the people that John knows and all the work he's doing, I purposely didn't ask him, why do you think he put us together to talk about this? And I'm going to go first, and I'm going to go Mandy, because I kind of knew your story, but God, really got me personally. And maybe it's because I'm a mum as well, and all things you said, turning grief into a positive, and the things that you are now doing and the people that you are helping, and the way you've, I think in just this chat, reflected Will, I think he'd be incredibly proud of you, and I think that you're an example of, you know, what we can all be doing and achieving. So I think he's put you here because of what you've been through, but also now what you're doing.
Thank you.
So
Just
Katie,
to make you cry even more.
Pick somebody. Why do you think John's... Go on then. Why do you think John put me here today?
Oh, I was going to say that because of all the stuff you're doing with all the children. You know how important it is to get in when they're little and have a chat.
Yeah, the chat.
It's so important. And you're pushing it.
Together.
Yeah, you're pushing it.
Together. Go on then, Shirley.
I think I'm here because I've known the family a long time. I knew your mum, socialised with your mum, I've danced with your mum. And before my mum died, she'd actually written a quite sweet piece of poetry, and I've been privileged to be asked to read it quite a few too many funerals. And I was reading it at another friend's mother's, and John was on hand, and I asked John's permission just to say, I'm going to start with, there's never a good time to lose your mother, because there isn't. I lost mine at 52, John had lost his when she was only 42, wasn't she? And this other gentleman, his mother was 90 and had just gone, you know, just moved off. So I was doing a thing about mothers generally, but also John knows that part of my story is I thank Marie, your mother, because we were so cross that she'd not dealt with her cancer early enough. As soon as I found something, I'm straight there to a grown up and saying, tell me about this then, what's going on? And so I credit my enduring life to the fact that Maria was in mine, and John knows that.
That's
so I think that family connection goes back.
And also, you know, the way you talked about the loss of a family and the loss of your baby, and then facing death with your illness, you've got
layers.
A perspective of layers that many of us will never understand. So I find that really interesting as well. Christine. I think you've given us a different perspective. Just that word I'm going to take away is honour.
Yeah,
for
lots
children,
of the
so I
old-fashioned
think
language just seems to work, doesn't it? Because you're drawing on wisdom that you're part of this big community. Everybody has been through this. This is our one certainty.
Yeah.
You know, if we're lucky, we have 4,000 weeks to live.
Yes.
Starting from
now, today. And I think you've given us a different perspective because you've probably seen not only your own grief but lots of families and lots of different situations.
Yeah.
And you've got a different perspective looking in.
It's a
lots of
really,
things.
very similar to Katie, who just has people walk in and you take them as they are.
Yeah.
So I've learned to let people know that I'm not afraid of what they're feeling.
Yes.
So however overwhelmed they feel,
Yeah.
you can to have somebody there and say, oh, that's okay, I'm not afraid of this.
Yeah.
Whatever you throw
There's
at me,
no
that's
rush.
okay.
Yeah.
That's good, I can take that. But to hear all the people's different stories, and I learn so much from every single family I meet, and the joy that I get. People think when they see that you work within funerals, they don't know what face to put on. It's, I'm very sorry for what you do. But the joy we find, so I'm sure that, you know, when you were talking with John or the family, or when you're sharing your memories, the laughter that happens when you're talking about somebody that you love, it sits alongside this pain that you have. So I walk away from many families feeling inspired and full of laughter, and like my heart's just expanded a little bit. So.
And we all know, by chatting, by talking, by the work I'm trying to do for schools and children and making a difference, if we resonate and anything that we've talked about today helps one person, then that's a plus. But it's that open, honest conversation. And there's lots of things I know I personally have taken away from today, so I found it really, really
Can I just
helpful.
add one for bereavement counselling? Because a lot of people came into my life because I've received a cheque via John for somebody that lost to breast cancer, and I'd still be helping them. And at the time, there was actually some lottery funding, and I went to be a cruise bereavement counsellor because I didn't know if I was doing it right to start with, and things like that. So I did that, and I think there's such an opportunity for people who can't talk to anybody else in the family, or don't want it brought up again at the tea table tomorrow with accusations and anger. Do please find some help. And bereavement counselling is obviously one avenue. And our local library is actually amazing with the degrees of support. I brought some leaflets for you to take away. I can't believe what they do in the library to help with Alzheimer's and all these different things.
My early help family support workers are in there, you know, supporting families, they safe space walking.
They do so much locally, so we're very, very privileged to have all this in Shropshire and in Bushnell particularly.
And can I mention, when you say locally as well, I think that's really interesting that we've got 5 of us, different backgrounds, different stories, different ages, and we're all local from, you know, living in this small market town in Shropshire. But the range and depth of the stories and experiences that we've had, if we've got that here, think of the people you're walking past in the street who hold these stories. You know, I think that's interesting when you take a little microcosm and then think, okay, that's present just there. What's going on out there?
Well, they say be kind always. You never know what people are going through.
You just don't know, do you?
That's something that you've got to take away, isn't it?
And just thinking back to kids not going to funerals in my generation, I think part of that now, because I'm older and I reflect better, is that the parents didn't want to see the kids seeing them.
That's
upset.
Keeping it in, trying not to be upset and being brave because the children, when really they're just broken. And so I think that's changing, hopefully, as well.
It is changing.
It is. And we're going to keep on keeping on, aren't
keep
we?
pushing it.
So at the beginning of all of this, I asked you to take a piece of paper and write down what you hope somebody might, watching this, take away.
You've sat on yours.
Sat on yours, nice and warm. Shall I go first? Because I'm hosting. So I've just gone really simple and hope.
Love it.
Katie?
Mine was reassurance.
Mandy?
Mine was you're never alone.
Oh, I love that.
Mine was one I took a while to learn myself. It's a sign of intelligence to ask for help.
Lovely.
Oh, yes. Christine?
Yeah, I put find your tribe.
Oh.
whether that's people who will say, yes, you can do that thing for your funeral, or whether it's people who just, you don't have to explain yourself to, you have a shortcut to with the language you use, or your rugby community or whatever, find your
We're all going to have a tattoo on the way out because we're all in the same tribe.
Well, thank you all for coming today and talking. I can't even speak now. I'm so emotional. Openly and honestly, and as I say, my hope is that this might help just that one person or two or three, and keep talking.
And take time. Just take time.
Thank you all so much for today. Thank you.
Thank you for talking with you.
And cut.